Jason on the mic, welcome to the spot. Breeding those reptiles, straight fire, straight hot. Geckos in the house, snakes twist and turn. Lizards on the prowl, see the passion burn. Breeders in the game, they putting in work. Red-tailed bows, see them go berserk. Leopard geckos shine like scales of gold. Hobbyists unite, let them stories be told. Putting in that work every day and night. Jason got the spotlight, keeping it tight. Reptile keepers rise, making impact. Breeding them beauties, never looking back. Cages all set, heat lamps in place. Monitor lizards, putting on a chase. From the boa constrictors to the chameleons green. Building up the hobby, live the reptile dream. Corn snake slither, pipe.
All right, welcome back everybody to another episode of Putting in That Work. Today we got Mr. Jeremy Turgeon. Is that how you say your last name, man?
Yes, sir.
All right, man. How you doing today, man?
I'm good, man. I can't complain. It's been a busy day, but you know, anytime you get to work with the snakes is a good day.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, actually, so full on truth, I have no snakes. Like I'm a gecko person. Yeah. Like you are like literally popping my cherry for things with no legs.
I'm glad to do it.
All right, cool. That's what's up. So go ahead. What sparked your interest in Amazon tree boas? What's your herb origin story? Give me all the details on that, man.
Yeah, man. So for me, keeping reptiles all began with the fascination for dinosaurs, and I feel like that's for a lot of us. That's what it is. Is like we geek out about these cool reptilian-like things, and then at some point we're like, okay, I can't own a Triceratops, but I can go own a bearded dragon, and that's pretty cool. And that's pretty much just what really sparked it all. And when I was very young, maybe like 4 or 5 years old, I threw a temper tantrum in the local pet shop because I saw a fire-belly toad, and I had to have it. And my mom caved because I was making a big enough scene. And that was the inception of it all. Dude, I fell in love with that toad and started doing as much research as I possibly could on it, and eventually got some green anoles. And green anoles were the first things I ever bred, even though it was an accident. I was like 6 years old, and I was like, what's that big white poop? And it was actually an egg. And then moved over to leopard geckos, started breeding leopard geckos, bearded dragons. And then finally, when I was about 10, 11 years old, my mom let me get my first snake. And it was a corn snake. And then the rest was history from there, you know, with breeding the geckos and bearded dragons and stuff. Like I was selling them to local friends and the local pet shops, you know, we're not talking about much money. We're talking about, you know, 10, 15 bucks, you know, maybe 20 bucks per animal. So, you know, enough for as a young kid, like that's great money, you know?
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Man, you living large.
Like, yeah, exactly.
I get that McDonald's Happy Meal.
Exactly. That's right, man. So that was really what kind of started it all. And then, like I said, once I got snakes, it was, you know, can I do the same thing with the snakes? Can I breed the snakes? Can I sell the snakes? You know, snakes are certainly a harder sell than cute little lizards for sure. Yeah. But yeah, ended up finding myself being able to be in the same place. And I was ecstatic, you know, started with corn snakes, moved to ball pythons. By the time I moved out of my parents' home, I had 150 or so animals at their place across maybe 30 different species, probably a little bit more. Yeah, and it's just gotten more insane from there. You know, currently I don't have nearly the same amount of diversity. I probably have like maybe 15 or 16 different species of animals, and Amazons have become my focus for sure, which wasn't what I expected at all. So my origin story with Amazons in particular, maybe like 16 or so years ago now, I got my first ones, and I thought they were the coolest thing, but they were a bitey tree worm, you know, like it was an experience. I got bit in the face a few times, just like I didn't know what the heck I was doing. It was just like, you know, I think these things are really cool, but they hate me, you know. And after a while, I was like, okay, I had 2 pairs, and my first pair ever we named Frick and Frack because they were just absolutely miserable animals, but they really just hated everything. But I tried to breed one of the pairs, and I was breeding ball pythons and colubrids and species that have their own nuances for breeding, but definitely not the same as breeding boas. of any species. So understanding that was a little outside of my zone at the time. So I ended up selling them and focusing on other things that I was more familiar with and increasing my knowledge of colubrids and certainly ball pythons back then. And carpet pythons really caught my attention, and that became the whole thing. So then maybe 7 or 8 years now, it was right before I started working at Nerd, I got my hands on a captive bred animal produced by Keith McPeak, and it was a really chill snake. And I was like, okay, this is very different than what I remember from these guys, but this is cool, man. Like, the animal's super chill, it eats, does great, all this wonderful stuff. And I was like, I'd like to try to breed it. I missed them last time. Let's see if I can do it again, or do it with success this time. And that's when everything kind of started to sync up for me. I started seeing more people that had been breeding them for the last 15, 20 years, and what was happening in the States as far as like crazy red animals and bicolor animals. Just had these crazy colors and everything, and I was like, whoa, this is nuts, And I got my hands on a red male. It was an imported animal, but at this point, I've worked with animals for a long time. I worked with snakes in particular for a long time, so I had a much better understanding of how to use an animal's behavior for my benefit as far as avoiding bites and all those other things. So I really tried to use that to my advantage and had a great experience with this pair. I was like, this is great. I'm handling these. I'm not really getting bitten. Of course, they catch you by surprise once in a while. You bleed a little. But at the end of the day, it was just like, no, this is great, and being at Nerd and dealing with wholesalers and all that stuff and importers and everything, when they find out what you like and you got to be on the other side of that phone call, you're like, hey, I know South America import just came in. You got any cool Amazon tree boas in there? Like, what's going on? And then word gets around, oh, this guy buys Amazon tree boas. And before I left New Hampshire, I probably had maybe 12 or so Amazon tree boas. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to moving to North Carolina and trying to build that up a little bit. And now I've got just about 50 Amazon tree boas.
Damn.
I decided back in 2023, having the success that I had with them and seeing the potential with them, where again, mm-hmm. yes, people have been breeding them for the last 15, 20 years plus, but it's still very underground. It's still very nuanced, and the people in the community are pretty much trading animals amongst themselves, and every once in a while mm-hmm. they might let something go, but it's very closed off. And I was like, man, I think we look at stuff like emerald tree boas and green tree pythons, and they're like the epitome, right? The awesome,
like the upper
snake.
Echelon, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, I keep these, I breed these, that's the best, and the Amazon's kind of like the forgotten child, of Corrales, of the tree boas.
Redheaded stepchild.
Exactly. And I'm like, dude, but you got all these cool colors, man. Like, an emerald tree boa is born red and then turns green. I think that's awesome. I love emerald tree boas, but imagine that red staying red through this animal's entire life. Like, that's nuts. I have animals that are like so blood red saturated. They're like this red as 5 foot long adults, dude. Like, that's freaking awesome. Shout out to Home Depot, for having Amazon tree boa red in stock now. No,
right.
But like, that was so cool to me. And then, you see all the other colors and patterns that are possible, and then learning more genetically about them, realizing that like there's a lot of stuff we still don't understand. So it's very much in its infancy. Things are still on the ground floor. And while there's, some of the people that have been doing it long enough kind of have those ideas kind of dialed in on where things are, then out of nowhere, somebody in Europe produces something that throws everybody, off the trail again of like understanding. And I'm like, man, there's so much potential. And coming from the upbringing of working with ball pythons and corn snakes and carpets, and where everything, the vast majority of things are Mendelian genetics. You breed albino to normal, you make hets, you raise those up, you breed them back, you make more albinos, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Amazons, it's like, maybe we have a few genes like that, but you're gonna breed bicolor animal to a garden, and you're gonna hatch out a red animal, and you're like, wait, that doesn't, gray and orange and yellow do not make red. So what the hell is going on? You know?
So that I can kind of relate to with like, well, in the gecko world, right? So like gargoyle geckos, right? No, you could do stripe to stripe and you might get blotches. And so
Right.
that I understand that. Like, I'm not a big time morph guy. Like, I don't have anything in my collection that's a morph. Everything I have is pretty much natural. Like, I deal with like Stropherus, Cerdodactylus, like
Heck, the
Haemophilus.
cool things. Yeah.
Oh, most of mine are like, well, half of them are like dirty brown geckos, and the other half are like these, bright orange, and then what else? I mean, and then I got some chihuahuas, but I mean, there's no morphs in those either. So that like I said, I can relate to that part with, pairings and saying, all right, cool. I'm hoping to get this, and then some other shit just pops out. Like what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
So I could get down with that.
Yeah.
I've always been scared, like fearful of snakes, but like the whole keeping them, the genetics, the pairings, and all that stuff, right? Because I never really hear about people saying, "Yeah, I keep my stuff together year round." It's always we separate them, put them together when follicles or whatever is going on. Me, geckos, they'll stay year round unless I see some craziness happening. That's about it. Like my chihuahuas, they've been together for like 4 years. They ain't breaking up yet. I just separated like my one of my Stropherus pairs just because the male just would not stop. She gave me like 8 clutches this year, and I'm like, all right,
oh man,
she needs to chill. So I was like, you need to chill too, like, dude.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah. You're going to your little casita on the other side because I'm tired of this shit.
Right.
Yeah. So you guys are still getting in wild caught stuff. So you like there's still like there's like your genetics are almost like infinite right now. Like there's so many different possibilities, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So with with getting in your wild caught stuff, like what is like your what's your I guess quarantine setup, protocols, and all that stuff?
Yeah, so whenever I get something new in, the first thing I'm doing overall, of course, visual inspection of the animal. I'm not in the snake room. I'm usually in the kitchen or out on the back deck if it's a nice day out, and just doing an overall visual inspection, looking for mites, looking for any scars or any signs of respiratory infection or anything like that. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is the animal goes into a soak. So I'll put it in, depending on the size, I'll put a 6-quart tub or a 15-quart tub with about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch of warm water. And I'll let it sit there for about an hour. And I always have at least one incubator that's running year round. And it's usually my colubrid incubator, which sits around 84 degrees. And the purpose for that is 84. Amazon tree boas don't like it really hot. Most reptiles actually don't like it as hot as we think. So 84 is a great mid-range temperature, barring, of course, certain exceptions like it's some of the Asian colubrids and things. But that's the perfect temperature for an Amazon tree boa. So I'm going to put them on that soak for an hour in the incubator. So they're warm and they can drink, they can get hydrated. And then after about that hour, I'll go in and I'll add a couple of drops of Dawn dish soap, and that breaks the surface tension of the water. This way, if there's any mites that I didn't see, something could be hiding under a belly scale or something, now that animal is going to continue its soak for an extended period of time. And if there's any mites at some point, they're now surrounded by water, so they're going to try to come up and get away. And now those mites are then going to drown. So I'll leave an animal in that for multiple hours, because the last thing you want to do is put something into a quarantine rack and then there's mites and you miss it only takes one mite to find its way somewhere, or that gets on your finger, and then you go and touch something else accidentally, or you brush up against something and then there's a mite crawling away somewhere. So that's my number one thing. In most cases, I'll usually leave an animal on soak in that incubator for up to 48 hours. And that's all going to depend on, of course, again, does it look really dehydrated when it comes in? Does it have a mite problem? If it does, I'm going to let it soak a little bit longer. We're going to try to drown more of those mites. And again, because I'm also paying attention to the size of that animal based on where it's going to soak, the idea is you want the animal to be able to rest on the bottom and submerge as much of its body as possible. So that we're drowning as much as possible. Then We move into a rack in a different room where it's very sterile, newspaper or paper towel, water bowl, and with the tree boas, there's some kind of like a lattice plastic fence mesh something so that they can perch on, crawl around, to feel like some kind of still a tree snake, but something that's also very easy to clean. Because again, if there's mites or anything, I want to be able to submerge that and kill any potential mite eggs or anything like that. And they'll stay in that quarantine spot for at least 3 months. That's like a minimum for me. And during that time, I'm also looking for, is the animal drooling? Is it giving me any signs of respiratory infection? Anything like that. And in those instances, I can figure out, okay, do I need to hit it with some kind of like a flagyl or metronidazole to take care of any flagellates, or do I need to go get, parasitic medication in case it's got anything like that going on? So all of that is happening in that period of time over those 3 months. And then depending on where we're at, then we start looking at moving it into the next rack system. And it overall is probably like a 3-month minimum process, 6-month average process, to where I'm on that animal like a hawk before it goes into gen pop, so to speak. Before we're actually getting like bedding and all the other things in there, and that everything else has already gotten, that's gone through the whole quarantine process. And it's literally just because with these animals, Amazons out of all the other Corrales species are probably the hardiest, in my opinion. Okay. They do really, really well even as imports, but it only takes one thing. Mm-hmm. Depending on if they're an import or not, that will depend on how well they hand treatments for whatever it is. But as soon as we start talking about dehydration and things like that, like those animals can go downhill really, really fast. So that quarantine process is incredibly important to make sure that they're like rock solid before they enter the rest of the collection.
Yeah. So like for your wildcat stuff, do they show those high stress levels compared like when they I guess when they come in, like when you get them, are they showing those real high stress levels, or are they pretty like, all right, you look okay, you're doing your inspection, they're not, I don't know what even a snake would do. I know I think of like tokays or something, right? Like you get a wild caught tokay, that thing is just gnarly, right? Yeah. So for a ATB, how are they acting?
So the majority of the time, they're coming right out ready to grab your face.
Ready.
They're just like, so Amazons and a lot of the tree boa species, like they're fixated. They pay attention anything that moves and anything that's got a heat signature.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like, I have animals that, like some of my animals in cages that I have. Yep. Oh my God. I just totally had a brain fart. Heat panels. Have heat panels on the top of the enclosure. As I'm going to put them in, they're striking at the heat panel because they're like, big heat signature. And I'm like, come on, bro, you live here. You flick your tongue a few times, get familiar with this smell. You live here. That's your son. Like, that's literally providing you heat. Like, let's take a break for a second. But when you're pulling that animal out of the bag, it's probably going to bite you, on the hand because it's just like, heat signature entered the space. And then, as it's coming out, if you're right there staring at it, you're asking to get bitten. The trick with them, like any other arboreal snake, is they want to go up and away from whatever they're experiencing in that moment. It's just a natural behavior for them. So my thing is always get them out of the bag. While I'm doing my inspection, I'm trying to point them towards something. So like if I had one with me now, I've got a big light on a post right here. So I would be aiming it towards that post because it's going to inevitably be like, can I get to that? Can I climb on that? Like, can I get away? So I'm going to use that behavior to my advantage, because even if I still, like, maybe if I've got the snake in my hands, but I still touch it like this, it's going to be more apt to now just really try to get that way than try to turn back on me and be like, don't touch me. So I have that moment of like, you're using your brain for that. So I have a little bit more flexibility to kind of move you around and do what I need you to do so that I can do what I need to do.
Okay. Nice. So I guess when like a good way to like pull them out, do you use like I guess do you use snake hooks, or do you use like take the branch out that they're on? Is there easy ways for you to pull these snakes out of the enclosure without getting your face ripped off?
Yeah, so I'll definitely say like captive bred animals for the most part are actually pretty chill, and as long as you're you have to be very methodical about your movement. So if I go, even my nicest captive bred animal, if I go in there and I'm like you looked at me, huh? She's gonna bite me because now she's like, just what the hell, bro? Like, what's going on? But if I go, that same snake, if I go in there and I'm just very confident, pick her right up, no problem whatsoever. I will 100% use snake hooks. So a lot of times the Amazon tree boas are, I always joke and say they're the least tree of all of the tree boas. They'd rather be on something that's really wide and flat versus perched on a perch like we would think of like an emerald tree boa or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So with that, sometimes it's really easy to just go in and grab them. If you're using a snake hook, like some of mine that are a little bit more temperamental, I'll use a snake hook because they're usually just right out in the open, or they're in a hide box that I can easily get a tool into. And it's just a great way to alleviate as much stress as possible. If they happen to be out on a branch or on one of the other perches in the enclosure, I'll 100% just take that out. And then my job then is to just kind of work them off of that so that I can actually handle them. And in my, I don't know, almost 8 years or so now working with them, I've maybe taken a dozen bites in 8 years.
Yeah, it's not bad.
And it's not bad. It's not. Some of those bites have sucked. I've gotten a couple hematomas and they suck. But overall, like, it's really not the end of the world. Amazon tree boas, like the rest of the Corrales, do have some pretty sharp teeth.
Yeah.
So there is a slight pain element involved in comparison to some other snake species, but it's not the end of the world. It's really not.
Yeah.
The one hero's tear falls down, and then you carry on with your day. It's fine.
Right. Yeah. Hell, I think I've probably taken more bites from my Chihuahuas than you taking from your ATBs.
Dude, I have one male Chihuahua that if I catch him at the wrong moment, I'm getting annihilated for no reason.
Yeah, I used to have one. If I walk past his enclosure, he just runs up. What's up? I'm like, dude, like, chill the fuck out. And then here comes this girl looking at him like, what are you doing? Like, just staring at him like, yeah, pretty much. It's like, stop acting bad. We know who the boss is. Get the fuck back.
Right.
He's like, he's coming to bring food. You better chill the fuck out.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You bite him, you don't get fed. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. So how many different setups are you running?
So I have a handful of different setups based on whatever the animals are in for grow out. So my male Amazons end up going in 18-inch cube cages.
Okay.
So I've got a whole stack of those from Black Box Cages. Shameless plug.
Oh yeah.
And then my females. So this was really interesting, right? When we think about breeding on any kind of substantial scale, once we start talking past 10 animals or so, caging and the economics of caging really start to come into play, right? Like a heat panel that's 40 watts. If you've got up to 10, 400 watts of electricity, not that big a deal. When you start talking about 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 animals, that adds up really quick. So I'm a big proponent of rack systems in that regard, the economics of it. So my question started to become, well, what's the best way to house them in a rack system that can really accommodate everything that they need? They're, again, the least tree of the tree boas, so they need to be able to hide under things. They need to be able to hide in things, but they also need to be able to climb. They will climb up, quite a ways. So the 18-inch cubes work for the males. Most of my males are on the smaller side, like around that 4-ish foot mark, and they're a slender snake. So when they're coiled up, they really don't take up a lot of space. Females certainly can be a little bit larger, at 5.5 foot range. And I have a couple of really, really big females that are closer to 6, maybe just over 6 foot. But girth-wise, still kind of lean overall. So I got the idea after seeing some pictures of another keeper to use Cambro tubs, which are a food storage tub. If you're in the catering business, you've probably seen them. They're the clear polycarbonate bins. Look, the clear enclosures that you put your mangoes in or whatever, And I was like, oh man, I like those tubs, and I certainly like, Sterilite and Rubbermaid. They've got bigger options for sure. But I also wanted to think about consistency. Like some of these food storage containers, They have their mold, their polycarbonate molds, and that's it. It never changes. Rubbermaid and Sterilite, it's like every 3 years, something's changing, like by like a half an inch or a quarter of an inch. And you're just like, man, if I need to go replace this tub, they don't exist anymore. Like, now I got to build a whole new rack system, and it becomes a whole thing. So I built a couple of racks around the Cambro tubs, and I was like, I want to give this a shot. The extra large bins are 26 by 18 by 15. And I was like, okay, so it's basically like if you took that 18-inch cube and pressed it down, right now you're just kind of stretching it out backwards. So we get a little bit more of that depth, but we lose a smidge on the height. And I was like, okay, we can still create some added floor space here and with 15 inches of height. So what I did was took these corrugated plastic tubes that are for like your gutter runoffs. Like if you've got drainage spouts that you need to send off the house, they can't be on the foundation of the house. So I took those basically, cut them into 12-inch sections. And then what I did was I attached them about a foot off the ground of that enclosure and then just zip tied them into place. So this way, if they need to be removed, you just snip your zip tie and you can do whatever you need to do. And then you just put another zip tie in. Pretty low impact overall. One on each side. And I did the same thing in the cages too for the males. And then you have you've got one on each side. And then across of that on the rack systems, you put a big cork flat. So now you're allowing that female big spot to rest. And then there's a couple of like bamboo branches. And I just started utilizing tomato stakes. Like if you grow tomatoes in your yard, you've got those stakes that you tie the plant to. It's a plastic coated steel rod, so it's easy to clean. It's obviously it's plastic coated, so there's no rust to have to worry about there. It can be exposed to the elements. And they've got a little bit of give, so if the snake puts its full weight on there, it's going to bend a little bit. And just kind of have those kind of crossed at different points of the enclosure, so the animal still has something to climb through. And then, of course, just like Repti-Chip on the bottom for humidity and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, I really like this setup. And the racks that I built had back heat. And, I bred them in there and did well with it. But I was also like, some things not quite being met. Like I'm still dealing with humidity issues. I'm still dealing with, females that are gravid that are just like, they're so uncomfortably pressed up against the back of the enclosure. I'm like, I don't really feel great about that. In the cages, when I first was breeding them in the cages, the females would just sit on top of the corrugated tube right under the heat panel. And that's how they were getting their heat. And I was like, okay, I like that better. But again, economics. So how can I make this make sense? So I sat with Rich over at Reptile Basics, and I gave him this design. And I was like, here's the rack that I built. What I would like to change is the placement of the heat. And I'd like to find a way to integrate a misting system because humidity is such an important thing for these animals. And I was like, I'll figure out a way to incorporate lighting at a later point in time. Like misting system and more appropriate heat, especially for these females, is key. So I basically designed it so that the heat goes along the left side wall, but towards the back end.
Okay.
So it's just a 7-inch strip of heat tape along the back of the left wall. And then we basically, if you think about like the Freedom Breeder 4-foot rodent racks, there's basically a water line that goes across the back, and the water nipples kind of stick out, and the drawer slides in, and the nipples just go through this hole. So I took that same concept with the misting system integration. So we're taking the nozzle of the mist system, and that sits on the inside back wall, and you're just going to drill an extra hole in the back of the tub so that it slides right in, and the nozzle just goes right inside the enclosure, maybe by like about a ½ inch or so. So added some shims along the side of each shelf so that the tub slides perfectly straight in, so there's no messing with the nozzle or anything. And you just get a Mist King, or you get some kind of automated mist system. Put in there.
Okay.
I immediately, as soon as we got the prototypes done and everything, I was like, okay, this is great. When I tell you I moved the first set of animals in there, I immediately saw every behavior that I wanted to see. Females that are breeding there. So now there's 2 of those corrugated tubes. One's on the heat, one's on the cool. So females that start to cycle that I'm watching in these cages, they're on those cool tubs. They're on the cool tubes. They're not touching the heat. And then as soon as they ovulate, right into the heat.
Go to the heat.
They're
okay.
right on it. And because the heat is right up against where that tube is, they can sit on the tube or in the tube, whatever's more comfortable for them. If they don't want to be exposed to the outside world, they can go sit inside that tube and still be getting that heat. And it immediately changes how they react to things. They're way more confident because they can be in there and be like, I have everything that I need right now. I'm good. You don't need to touch me. You don't need to do anything with me. I'm perfectly content here. We're good to go. And so that is eventually what all of my females will be put into. Probably going to end up with like 50 or 60 slots in total. So 10 or 12 racks in total.
Okay.
Because with the Amazons, so a lot of Boas species in general, females don't do well if you breed them year after year after year after year after year. It takes a lot of effort for them to gestate babies. So my number goal is 75 animals, as 25 males and 50 females. And the purpose is so that I can give each female a year off. Whenever she produces, she gets the next year off, guaranteed. But I can always have the potential for 25 pairings, so one male to one female. Don't have to overwork my males, and my females always get that break if they produce for one season. I'll just note, okay, cool, this girl doesn't go in 2026 or whatever, she bred in 2025. So I wanted to be the whole purpose of doing this. One, I fell in love with the Amazon tree boas. There's so many elements to them that have really made me think, and we're taking rack husbandry to a new level and all these things, and that excites me. But also seeing a species that once people realize, like, oh, you mean it's not just immediately going to bite my face, like that. Now I kind of like this.
I've always heard that. Like, I remember just talking to like a shop manager at a reptile shop, and I was like, yeah, I dig the ATBs, I dig the carpets and all that. They're like, dude, all those snakes are gonna fucking murder you. I was like, really? Dude. Like, I was like, man, I don't know. I was like, I mean, you see how skinny that thing is? Like, how much? But it is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, but that's a fact, man. And because that's the stigma that they've been with for so long. When people do get them and do go to handle them and they're unfamiliar, they expect anytime that animal comes near them, it's to bite. And it's like, no, that's not it. You have to understand what this animal's doing and what it wants to do. Yes, there will be instances where when that snake comes around and it puts its head on your arm, it's going to be like, oh, heat and bite, of course. But that's not the intention.
Yeah.
The intention of that snake is, I'm trying to climb. I want to go somewhere. You're preventing me from escaping.
Okay.
Of course I'm going to come back and bite you,
Yeah.
But like, I remember at one of the local shows here in North Carolina, watching somebody handle like a big, maybe 6 or 7 foot coastal carpet python. And, carpets, they are semi-arboreal, so they really want to feel supported in wherever they're climbing, however they're climbing. And the way they were handling it was like anytime its head came near their body, they were like doing all this, like they're breakdancing with the damn snake. And I'm like, bro, stop. Like, you're going to get bit. Like, this entire experience is pissing that snake off, and you are afraid for no reason. He's like, no, man, it's gonna bite me. And I'm like, give me the damn snake. Just give me the damn snake. When I first moved out here, I had maybe like 40 or so carpet pythons and Brussels pythons and stuff. And I've kept them for decades. So I was like, just give me the snake. And as soon as you supported the body, it was like, oh, okay, cool, we're good. It's the same that I worked with blood and short-tailed pythons. It's the same thing. Everybody thinks these terrible, nasty meat missiles. And it's like, no, like, that's the
first time I've ever heard that.
Yeah. I mean, having been bitten by some big adults, like when you get nailed, like you're like, damn, I got sucker punched and bit all at the same time. Like, they pack a lot of power, but largely it's because we're looming over them when we're going into their enclosure. So they're freaked the hell out, number one. And number two, when you go to pick them up, if they don't feel supported, then they feel like they're falling. And I don't know about you, but if I'm in a chair, an office chair, and I lean back, and it goes much further back than I'm expecting.
Oh yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm Matrix.
You know,
yeah,
like,
I'm doing the Matrix. Like, oh,
that snake suddenly is like, I'm falling. Something bad is happening, and you're touching me. Stop touching me, because now I feel like I'm about to die. You know, and they lose their mind, and you get bit in the process, and you're like, that snake is mean. No, that snake is fat, and you didn't do your job in holding it. Like, it's simple, you know, but it's not as easy as like, oh, look at the cute ball python I can put in the middle of my hand, and it loves me because it flicked its tongue. Like, we got to get out of that. Like, stop it. Stop it. Snakes take a little bit more mental power than some people think. But, you know, when it comes to the arboreal stuff, the tree boas and all these things, it really does start to become like you have to use their behavior to your advantage. So, like, I did a video on YouTube not too long ago that I literally titled, Don't Get Bit. Like, handling tips for Amazon tree boas. How can you, and it works for, again, multiple arboreal species, but I focus on the Amazons. You know, how to use those behaviors to your advantage, you know, and then I just filmed a whole video on like the overview of keeping Amazons and how I'm doing things. And, you know, I probably filmed with a dozen Amazons, not a single bite, you know, and like, that's my thing. I bring it every once in a while. I'll have a couple of Amazons on my table at shows, and, you know, people come by and they're like, oh, you know, like, that's really cool. And I'm like, do you want to see it? Like, no, man, I don't want to get bit. And I'm like, you're not going to get bit. And like, what do you mean I'm not going to get bit? You know? And I'm like, no, here, you know, like I've taken out long-term captive, so originally imported animals at shows, and just handled them and handed them off to people. And I tell them exactly what to look for. And every single time, never had anybody get bitten. And every single time, every person has been like, wow, I can't believe I'm not bleeding. Like, all I had to do was look for this and be able to do this. And my God, that was so cool. You know, not to say you're never going to get bitten, but like, again, we have to get out of this, you know, ball python mentality. I love picking on ball python people. I still keep ball pythons too, but we have to get out of the ball python mentality of like, it just has to sit in my hand, you know, otherwise it's mean. Like, no, you're full of yourself, dude. You're so full of yourself. That's not it at all, you know, but like, you have to be willing to learn. You know, learn what that animal's expecting. Just like anything, just like you would your dog or cat. When you get a brand new dog or cat, you got to figure out like, okay, well, Fluffykins doesn't like when you pet its left ear. And so don't pet its left ear. Simple, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like I said, like I had a Tokay, and I learned its habits. That thing, after a while, like, yeah, I didn't pick it up. We had a mutual respect. You don't bite me, and I'll feed you, right?
Yeah.
And you know, but at the end, before I ended up selling it, no, I can move its tail, because he knew I'm moving his tail because I'm trying to close the door, or I could tongue feed him. You know?
Right.
So you have those mutual relationships, and like just like you said, like people got to stop thinking like some of these animals are really not that smart, and you just gotta know there's some that you have to work harder for. Like I said, like a Tokay, you got to earn their respect. You know, just like people that keep king crows and stuff like that. You got to earn their respect, because those are very intelligent animals. They will remember the shit that you did. So, you know, I always tell people that. So I'm like, yeah, you got to earn their respect if you want them to, or you want to do whatever. Like for me, I'm not the person that I have to hold my animals. I've never been that kind of person. I'd rather look at them in their enclosure, observe them, admire them, everything like that. I don't have to go, oh, let me pick them up and do all this. And no, that's not me. No, I mean, all you're doing is you're just stressing the animal out anyways. You know, like that animal does not want you to lay with it in bed. It's not a dog. Right. It's not a cat. You know, it's not like any furry animals that really want that attention. You know, these animals, most of them don't want your attention. If they just like, feed me, leave me the hell alone. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's when you do find those unique moments where it's obvious that the animal has some kind of relationship with its owner, like there's some, it's twofold. One, you don't know that relationship that person has with that animal. Maybe they raised it from a baby and it's just really dialed in. Number two, like, having a relationship with an animal is oftentimes one-sided, and that's because you don't know the parameters of your relationship from that animal's. Like I remember having that discussion with Savannah at Gatorland, where she was like, your relationship with a crocodilian, like, what you're expecting out of that animal. That animal has a whole other set of guidelines that you don't know because it can't speak to you and tell you those things. So there is a mutual respect, a mutual understanding between keeper and animal, and it's very rare that we see those lines kind of get blurred. Like, there's very few species where that happens. Like, we do see it happen with things like monitor lizards. We see those things kind of being broken. We're like, I can speak from experience working at Nerd. We 100% had monitor lizards that when you open the enclosure, they're walking over to you to come out and hang out with you. But as soon as they come out of that enclosure, they're walking around. They're not coming up to tussle with you or roll around with you. They're happy to see you. They do enjoy the chin scratch, but then they're going to carry on their merry way.
Yeah, they're about to go and explore. As long as you're not like, hey, here, let me mess with you real quick, boom, 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 throw them all off. You're like, what the hell just happened? Let me just get out of here real quick. My buddy, he has a Savannah monitor. He raised that thing from a baby, and that thing like is chill as all hell. It is a dog for real. His kids will go pet it, everything. He'll let it roam around his apartment. He just chills. He doesn't bother you. He doesn't do anything. And then when he needs to go bask, he goes back into his cage, bask, comes back out. Definitely like stuff like that's really dope. I love that stuff.
Hell yeah, man.
So with breeding, like, so I guess they're live bearers, right? Yeah. Or they drop eggs. Okay, cool. Yeah, I know most boas are live bearers. There's a few that drop eggs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So this is the part I never really got with snakes, because people are like, oh yeah, we got to check follicles and all this stuff. Now, what is your approach to all that?
So with snake breeding, we're checking for follicles for sure. So certain animals breed in certain seasons, and we can determine that, with them by, for certain animals have to hibernate. Certain animals, it's a food cycling thing. So we're increasing the amount of food that they're getting in a more consistent timeline, which kind of gets them to think, okay, well, food's at a surplus, which means offspring of that food is at a surplus. So if I have my babies very soon, like, they'll be able to eat and grow and do their thing. Great, wonderful. With the Amazons, it's very interesting. So I've read two articles, oh my gosh, another brain fart. Today has been that day. 2 publications. Woohoo,
okay,
big words. 2 publications, both with slightly differing viewpoints when it comes to breeding as far as temperature cycling and stuff like that. One says, cooling period is necessary. The other doesn't even mention a cooling period whatsoever. So I go back to thinking about where they're actually coming from. Amazon tree boa, they're coming from South America. They've got quite a wide range, but they're tolerating some temperature variations, maybe within 10 to 15 degrees, but also, like, we're not there temp gunning them to see where they prefer to be. So, it might be 95 degrees, but, for a week, but they're chilling in a spot where it's really 82.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So those kind of things. So I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily want to try to cycle things with temperature and manipulation in those regards. But what is happening in the Amazon rainforest, a wet season and a dry season.
Dry season. So, there you go. Yes.
But during the dry season, what's happening? Food is less available because there's less food for those prey items. So on average, I'm usually feeding my Amazons every other week, and it's a substantial prey item. They're most of the adults are really just taking adult mice, maybe a jumbo mouse. A couple of my big females might take like a weaned rat or something, but not very large prey items in general.
Mm-hmm.
So when I want to get them to try to start cycling, I'm also increasing the misting frequency, which is where the mist system comes really into play, because it's a tactile thing. It's something that's physically touching the animal. That spray, that bump in humidity, they can feel it. And then I'm feeding them every week instead of every other week. And I might vary the prey item size a little bit more, just because now we're stimulating, okay, well, you've been getting a bunch of big adult animals, because now, every other week, because in those dry season times, the things that are going to survive the most are the bigger animals. They've got more fat content. They can go a little bit longer in a search for food and water. Now that moisture is more available, i.e. plants are more available, insects are more available. So now there's some smaller things popping around. Now maybe there's like some quail or some birds and stuff that might be floating around as well. So I might change up the diet a little bit, but it's happening more consistently. And if I'm feeding, let's say something that would normally get an adult mouse, I'm feeding like a hopper. I might feed it a hopper every 4 days, because a hopper is a very insignificant meal. So I might do that just to kind of change it up. And now we're being like, hey, food is really prevalent right now. Like this would be a great time to start thinking about reproducing. And from what I've seen, that does seem to work with the overall mass of the females, but there's still a few that I have that will just start randomly cycling. So the one thing that I've learned is that you just have to listen to your animals and pay attention to behaviors of your animals. So we can try to dictate as much as we want, but at the end of the day, they're going to do what they want to do. So what I've done now, I've gotten to a point where, I really don't need to mess with the Amazons, which is wonderful. I certainly do take them out to film with them and highlight them for videos and highlight them with people and things. But what I do at a bare minimum, especially if it's an animal that, really is kind of a jerk and I don't enjoy taking out, unless I absolutely have to, is once a month, I will go through and palpate my females. So I grew up old school, so we palpated everything. So I don't use an ultrasound or anything.
Okay.
I did for one season. I used an ultrasound for one season, and it was miserable. I was like, cool. Those are 8 millimeter follicles in that ball python, and it feels like a little BB. I already knew that, and nothing's changed. So
yeah. And how much you spend on that ultrasound?
Luckily, it wasn't mine. So
there you go.
But yeah, after that I was like, I found myself just going back to palpating. It's like, hey, when the battery dies in that ultrasound, what are you doing? You're palpating. So might as well just go back to palpating. So yeah, so I'm paying attention to a few things before I even go to bother a female. If I see a female that's more so on the heat, I'm not necessarily going to bother her, even for that once a month routine check. But if all of a sudden between that point to the next, I noticed she's starting to hang more on the cool side. She's seeming more ravenous with food, because again, during the off season, the dry season, I'm feeding once every other week. So if suddenly she's coming out and like nailing that prey before I can even, fully open the tub, then I'll make a note of it and be like, okay, I need to make sure I check that girl this time when I do my checks. And it's proven really helpful. I've found a few females, even this season, I found a few females that have started to cycle now, and I haven't made adjustments to the food. I haven't made adjustments to misting cycles or anything like that. They're just starting to cycle. So I make a note of that. When I feel it, I'll start to increase their individual food and kind of get them to go like, okay, cool, this is the right time, whatever. And then I'm looking at males and I'm thinking, okay, what males kind of in that prime time, body size and body weight to be able to do it. Because again, I'll food cycle my males as well, because they need to feel like they're robust enough to breed for the season. So I might start paying attention to some males that I want to start throwing into those early rotations and be like, hey, for the next, month, I'm feeding you every week instead of just twice, that month. And it's proven very helpful for me to just routinely go through once a month. It's a very minimally invasive moment for the animal. It's like, hey, I gotta pick you up for all of 5 minutes. This whole thing should be no more than 5 minutes. So if you'd stop trying to eat me and just go into your home, we could be done. I promise you. But like the video that I just did last week on the Amazons, I had one of my bigger tricolor females out, and she's been hanging on the cool side a bit more frequently than I've noticed. And she's a very slender female, but she's starting to kind of fill out towards that last third. So as we were filming with her, I was like, I'm going to palpate her, because I think this girl might be starting to cycle. And sure enough, there was half a dozen follow-ups that were very easy to feel. And I was like, yep, okay, cool. So we got to mark that, and we'll start feeding her a little heavier. And now I got to start looking at males and figure out what I want to pair to her. So I still haven't made that decision yet. I've got another week or two before I have to finalize it. But yeah. So, and this. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Jenny. So, how long do you put the males in the cage with the female?
So it really depends. If I can catch them locking, then I'll be a little bit more strategic in how long I leave the male in there. So usually I'll put a male in, I'll introduce a male, and I'll do that. I'll leave them in there for like 2 or 3 days. Okay. And if I see a lock, then before that 3 days is up, then once they're unlocked, I'll pull them out.
Yep. Okay.
If I don't see a lock, but they're like cuddled up with each other, then I'll leave them in there for the 3 days, because I'm like, cool, you guys haven't, you don't hate each other yet. That's wonderful. Yeah. Because sometimes you put pairs together and they want nothing to do with each other. They're on opposite sides of the cage. They're like, get the hell away from me,
So they don't try to, like, the female doesn't try to eat them or anything like that.
No.
Not like because was it like king snakes or somebody that will eat each other?
So ridiculous, dude. I had multiple female calcanes try to eat males this year. I was very, very frustrated.
God damn.
That. But yeah, it was not fun. It was not fun.
Oh man. So with your misting cycle, what's the duration for that during breeding season and then off season?
So this will be the first year that I have it going into what I would want to start to create as the wet season. So right now it's a daily mist that lasts about 45 seconds.
Okay, that's a good one.
It's not
a good mist.
It's not anything huge, but it's enough. Because I also have to think, like, I'm running one unit right now to hit 10 enclosures. Okay. So I want to make sure that everything, that the water's able to get through and get to everybody. So 45 seconds, I feel like it gives everybody a decent enough boost in humidity, and everybody gets some element of spray. So I'm thinking if I want to start manipulating that, I might change the time in which the mist happens. So right now it's happening at around 10:15 in the morning. I might actually start to change that towards like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I might let it go for well over a minute, maybe a minute and 30 seconds. So basically we're going to think about doubling that time. And so this is where the trick comes in, because in a rack system, there's no easy way to drain the water, right? So you risk, bedding getting dank and gross and everything. So that is something that I have to kind of play with. If I increase that time of mist, it's a very fine mist, so in theory it shouldn't be too big of an issue. But with that happening every day, at some point that's going to add up to something. So I have to kind of figure out, okay, do I change the cycle, and do I change the cycle for many months? Or do I change the cycle and maybe I do that for 1 month, and then I bring the time back a little bit on the length of time that it's misting, but still keep that afternoon, because usually afternoon into early evening is when that rain is really going to start to come down. So that's kind of what I'll be toying with this season, and see if I notice any shifts. So I'm excited, because that's something that I haven't had the chance to play with. It's been like, oh, well, time to mist, grab the hose and spray it down, and there you go, and see you tomorrow. That's pretty much what it's been. So now to be able to dial things in a little bit more specifically, I'm interested to see how that plays into everything. Does it make a difference? Does it not make a difference? Who knows? And it might take a couple of seasons to dial in whatever experimentation I do this year. If I immediately see like, damn, everything's going, then figure it out. But, if it's like, well, last year I had 4 female cycle, this year I had 5, that doesn't really tell me much.
Okay. Yeah. Because I think, we talked to Roy, what the hell's this? Wellspring?
Roy Gresco?
No, Roy Blodgett. So we did an episode on Polycris. No, all in that South America. Yeah. And so we did, South America. So I definitely think you're on that right track because he was talking about, I was like, yeah, no, I up that misting sessions during the wet season, and because that's when everything's at an abundance. Your
Exactly.
food is at an abundance, your plants are growing, so definitely like you're on that right track with this stuff with in those. I mean, and that's a dope ass idea too. Your racks, because I don't know how many people actually have misting systems in their racks, and
Right.
yeah. And then I've seen someone actually have a light in their racks, and I think it was Focus Cube. They
Yes.
actually, yeah. So I would definitely maybe chop it up with them, get some brainstorming because I think they had it like just on the side of in the back, and it just pops on, get that photo period in and stuff like that. Are they nocturnal or are they diurnal?
They're a nocturnal species.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, so the lighting is definitely the next idea. So I've been looking at, because once we incorporate photo period, then I can incorporate plants, and then I can, even if it's just a pothos, we're gonna overall just now have a better air quality in each enclosure, and it's gonna get a bump in humidity as well. So yeah, that's definitely the next idea. So I've been looking at, they have the tape lights, LED tape lights.
Oh yeah.
So because of the way the Cambro tubs are situated with that little gap, that little lip between the very top edge where the lid lays on, it's actually the perfect amount of space for a tape light to kind of go right above. So I have to kind of tinker around with placement ideas and that stuff. So but I'm excited because, again, like we're just talking about taking husbandry to that next level, and going back to economics again, just thinking about fundamentally what the animals need and being able to provide that, and also being in a position where we're doing that, but we also don't need keepers to be breaking the bank, right? Like it's awesome to go spend money on super high end, decked out, all this stuff, but and maybe that's not your jam, and that's also okay. The biggest key is being able to provide the animals with what they need, and to really get that as close to perfect as possible, because we're never going to be perfect. No matter how many enclosures you buy, how many fans you put on it, misting systems, lights, you can put every Arcadia light known to man in your friggin' cage, you're still not going to be better than the sun. So
yeah, no, you're not going to be better than nature.
We'll never be perfect. We will never be perfect in that regard, but we can strive to get as close to that as possible. And that's, when it comes to the topic of rack keeping in particular, like that often gets incredibly villainized, especially in today's climate of keeping and people questioning ethics and all this stuff. And I think in order to look at something like an Amazon tree boa that is incredibly heavily imported, and most people are having a bad time keeping them because they get them and they're dehydrated already. They've gone through the stress of import. They're, sitting in somebody's random rack somewhere, random cage, and, they're the often forgotten about animal, the redheaded stepchild, as we called them earlier. Because they're not the emerald tree boa. They're not the pretty green one, and that usually leads to people having a poor experience with them. So to be able to be in a position to, I've changed my entire business to focus on Amazon tree boas, to be able to be in a position to where, I might try to cycle 25 females in a year. Do I expect 25 litters? No. But if I can have 10 litters a year of genuine captive bred Amazons, of all different projects. I have some yellows, I have reds, I have tricolors, bicolors, leopards. I've got a little bit of everything that can kind of satisfy every person's level of interest. That for me is the key, where I'm just like, let's really take the availability of captive bred Amazons to the next level so that everybody has the chance to have a good experience with them, and not have to worry about the, necessarily the negative end or the back end BS of keeping imported animals that can pop up.
Cool. Sorry. Cat and the dogs were going at it.
No, you're good, dude.
Please.
I got our little dog is under the couch right now, and he's playing with a toy every so often. So I start feeling, what the hell's going on?
Yeah. So, all right. So how many per litter, how many are you actually getting? Was like the range for that?
So on average, between 5 and 8.
Okay.
I have some bigger females that have started to cycle that when I palpated them have like 12 to 14, and those are like some of those really monster girls. So, but on average, between 5 and 8 is
That's not bad at
usually
all.
average across the board. So yeah, it's great. Like you're not getting inundated with a bunch of babies, you know.
Yeah.
Like
And
we're not
are you
doing any of that.
housing them individually, or do you let them kind of in a group setting until they're old enough to you have to start moving them?
Yeah, so I keep everything individually.
Okay.
I have a couple of pairs if like I'm noticing that, again, I'm not seeing locks, but they're cuddled up, I'll leave them together.
No. The babies.
Oh, babies. Oh, my bad. No, babies.
Okay.
I'll separate pretty much right after their first sheds. So I'll keep them all together, and I just put them in a 6-quart tub on some damp paper towel with something in there where they can get out of the water. But that humidity to get through the first shed is like key.
Okay.
So once that's happened and they've gone through that first shed, then I separate them. Largely because when you start to get them to eat, sometimes you'll get one that like you really got to tease with a rodent, and if you're trying to do that when you've got all of them together, they're all going to get freaked out and be like, no, you know. So just separate them.
Now with them, are they so small that you have to like cut like a pinky up for them or something, or can they take one right off the tongs, like a full one?
Thank God I don't have to cut things up into tiny pieces, man, like that.
I always heard about like Antaresia. Like they're like, yeah, I gotta give like a pinky tail or a part of a leg. I'm like, God dang.
Yeah, man.
Becoming a butcher over here.
It can be rough, man. I'll say, so Amazon's, your average baby is coming out, you know, if you get of course you can get babies of all different sizes, but my average litter, like babies are popping out in 14 to 16 inches. So they're a pretty substantial size right out. So they're actually taking fuzzy mice for their first meals.
Okay.
Which is fantastic. I absolutely love that. I'm very thankful for that. Yeah, I've had a couple hatch a little on the smaller side where I'm like, okay, you are too small for a fuzzy, but you can take like a 3 or 4 day old pinky, something with a little size. You can tolerate pretty easily, and the majority of them will take frozen thawed right off the bat, which is spectacular. Because that's another just annoying thing in general when you're like, oh, well, you know, they'll take live for the first 6 or 7 meals. Then I switch them over to frozen, and you do all the ball pythons. I'm tortured by ball pythons. But yeah, they've taken frozen thawed. Every baby that I've produced has taken frozen thawed right off the bat, which has been spectacular. And knock on wood that continues moving forward with every other litter. But yeah, dude, I kept Antaresia years ago, and feeding babies, like I couldn't get enough like fresh 1 day old pinky mice for some of those tiny little babies. I'm like, they need to make smaller mice. Like, I don't understand.
Oh man. So with them, do you feed them more frequently than you would your adults to kind of get them going, get their metabolism going and everything like that?
Yeah, 100%. So the babies, pretty much babies up to around 2 years old, I'm feeding every week. They're getting fed every week. And then once they're around 2 years old and I'm feeding them, you know, like a small adult mouse, then I'm usually going to every other week at that point, because they can handle that, and I don't want them to get obese. You know, like that's the one thing when it comes to a lot of these different and niche species, like they're really not eating every week, and it's really easy to make them obese. You know, we certainly, like, if you look at an Amazon or an emerald or something in the wild, like as an adult, like, yeah, that's a robust animal, but that's a muscular animal. You know, a lot of times in captivity, when we see that, like we're actually looking at an obese animal.
I say the same thing about like crested geckos and stuff like that. Trust me. Like I was like, you don't see crested geckos in the wild with rolls on their side, right?
Exactly.
Like, no, I always say, I'm like, the amount of crested gecko diet they're feeding them, I swear they probably had diabetes, because that all sugar. I'm dead.
Oh man.
Like,
absolutely.
You know, like I feed my chihuahuas primarily a bug diet. Like with maybe twice a month, I give them the crested gecko diet. You know, I mean, and half the time they don't even eat it I have mealworms and superworms in the enclosures. They eat that shit, then they eat them. So they're still getting it, but like I said,
Yep.
they just don't have all the roles like a lot of them that you'll see.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Even I see tokeis like that too, but like they're just feeding them ridiculous shit. Like
yeah,
no,
like
they're
here's 50 dubia roaches. Just go have at it, have at it. And I think there's a when we talk about reptiles in general, I'll keep the tangent short, but a lot of what we think of comes from these really the popular pet species, the ball pythons, the crested geckos, the corn snakes, the White's tree frogs, all these things that they do really well in captivity because they eat really really readily, and I'm not at all saying go starve your animals, but what I am saying is like they don't need to become fat slobby monsters that can't move. If you miss a feeding, it really promise you it's really 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 okay. Because I mean we see it all the time in especially with ball pythons. They're a species that's known to be kind of finicky and picky when it comes to feeding, and largely because somebody gets it and they want to hold it because they love it. They're so excited to have it, but it stresses them out. Or they're put in too large of an enclosure, which, yes, is a real thing. I don't know why people say, like a wild. Yeah, that's great, but they still existed in one burrow for a long time. Anyway, so understanding that, we as people are lucky because we have this wonderful food industry, and it's not so wonderful, but, we can get food pretty much whenever we want. We can go get food. You're bored and you want to eat because you're bored. You can do that. And if you want to weigh 500 pounds, then your prerogative. You can do so. These animals in the wild don't have that luxury. They do go through these dry periods where food is incredibly scarce. And when we talk about replicating those things, again, I'm not saying starve your animal at all. But again, there's nobody that's out in the wild saying, okay, snakies, it's Wednesday at noon. Time for your mice that's appropriately sized and perfect for you. No, Jimmy, this one's Bob's mouse. Like, that doesn't exist. They're getting what they can get, and sometimes they kill an animal that's too big. Sometimes they kill an animal that's very small because that's what's available.
Yes,
that's all that's all they get. So same thing for the cresteds and some of these gecko species, man. It's like, having the access to Repashy and Pangea diet and all that stuff is wonderful. It is a great thing that has made the barrier for entry and keeping these things that much easier, right? Which is always great to get new people in. But realizing like they don't need that every other day in a 2-ounce cup. If you want to do that in a container, this big, different story. Go lick that up when you drink your water in the morning. Perfect. But again, if you go to the pet store to get your crickets and the pet store's out of crickets, you should not be having a panic attack about your gecko,
it's
not having its crickets.
Yeah. And like when my store don't have crickets, cool, whatever. Like that's when I utilize the gecko diet.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then, I mean, they, like you said, that cold, dry season, they're not going to be eating anyways. Like this year, I'm actually going to try to put some of mine down and not feed them for like a month or two if I can get it cold enough. So it just depends. If I can really get it cool enough in here, these geckos aren't going to be eating except for the babies. Like all my grow outs, they'll eat, but the adults, no, they're going to get cooled down and stop eating. Lights are going to be off. Everything. I'm gonna go ahead and try it this year. I always tell my buddies that shit gives me anxiety, but they do it in the wild, so they'll be fine. I just gotta tell myself that because who is it? Like, so I got Phylloris amnicola, one of the Australian leaf-tailed geckos. They've been known to hunt in like 40-degree weather, so it's like, how fucking cold do I gotta get them? Yeah,
right. I
was like, man, so I'm gonna have to probably move them like close to a window where they get a nice cool breeze in the wintertime, so it really cools them down at night. My chihuahuas, like people don't think like new cow doesn't get cold. It's like, no, it gets like in the 50s, so they can tolerate it. They'll be okay. Australia, it's one of those arid climates where it's hot as fuck during the day, and at night it's gonna get cold as hell. Like, no, they so I'm gonna be practicing that this upcoming season. No, so
Heck yeah.
like I said, it gives me anxiety, but going to do it.
I feel it, man. I think about, you know, when I was really heavily keeping Australian snakes, like carpets and stuff, you know, keeping Brettles pythons. Like Brettles pythons were always like that. You know, they weren't as hard as breeding diamond pythons, but you had to get them cool, and they wouldn't reproduce if you couldn't get them cool enough. And, you know, I was always lucky keeping so many different species. My ambient room temperature was always on the higher side. And growing up in New England, we get pretty nasty winters. So there's a natural room drop. So I could just turn and let the rack just sit at ambient temperature, and my Brettles pythons I'd move to the bottom of the rack. So they even got a little extra draft. And they might get down into the 50s, you know, mid to upper 50s. And I had some people that were like, "It's not cool enough. You're not going to get them to breed." I've never paired Brettles pythons and not gotten eggs. And that's a flex. Yes, I'm bragging because I get that right. Because even after I didn't keep them for 10 years, I kept them again and did the same thing with the same parameters and still produced them. So eat your heart out.
There you go.
I love my Brettles pythons. But to that point, like, you know, like they can tolerate it. And, you know, it doesn't always necessarily have to get to the extreme. You just have to be able to make that situation happen. But, you know, we look at North American colubrids, dude. North American colubrids, something like a corn snake, as simple as a corn snake. You know, yeah, you can find them in Florida. Guess what? You can find them in Jersey. It snows in New Jersey. You know, like these animals can tolerate a lot. It's actually like North American colubrids are probably one of my favorite overall colubrid groups, largely because they often make great intro pets. You know, first time snake pets. But I always tell people, especially from my experience coming from the New England area, you lose power in the winter and the house gets cold, your corn snake is going to have a better chance of survival than your ball python. You know, simply just based on where it comes from. You know, if West Africa starts to get 40 degrees or below, you know, I'll change what I'm talking about. But, you know, like that corn snake, you know, it's not going to be great, and maybe you want to hold it or put it in a snake bag and put it in your sweater, you know, to keep it a little warm, you know. But overall, like, it's got a better chance of tolerating that than something from another country that's more tropical, you know. And for me, like, I've said that to some people out here, because even in North Carolina, we get some cold times, and again, you can lose power during the winter, and it gets, you know, it doesn't get negative degrees like it does up in north, but you know, we've gotten some nights here that get close to 0. You know, so I tell people, if you happen to live in that part of the state where it does get some snow, or you do get kind of cold, if you lose power, this snake's going to still do great. You know, it's not going to be happy. It's going to slow down, you know, but it can tolerate it a lot better. And when power comes back, or you're able to keep it a little warm, it's going to bounce back much easier. And a lot of people don't think about that, you know. So when it comes to having that good pet experience with reptiles, like, something I think a lot about, you know, because those of us that are in it, that do it, you know, we're always thinking like, oh man, I got to make sure I have a generator, or I got to make sure, you know, I have this backup and this backup and whatever, you know, especially when we're dealing with that exotic stuff that's like, that's got to be warm, dude. Like, if I lose power in the summer, no problem. But as soon as December, January hits, if I lose power, I'm screwed, you know. For the person that's got colubrids, those things have been hibernating for 3 months. You know, like, they don't care what the hell's going on, dude.
Yeah, they still sleeping. They're like, whatever, cool.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, got a little chillier today. You know, like, it's fine. So I absolutely love North American colubrids for that fact alone, because it really does give you a little bit more flexibility there. And again, it's something that most keepers aren't thinking about. So when you bring that point up, you know, you see a lot of them be like, actually, yeah, I didn't think about that. And we lost power last year for like 2 days. You know, here's a pet that's going to be okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely feel, you know, because I'm on the opposite end. Like, I'm in Arizona. So, no, winter, not worried about it. Summer, I'm fucking worried. Like,
yeah,
I lost,
for sure.
A few years back, I lost AC in my apartment. I just got my first year of Platus. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? So, I mean, right? Yeah. So I was panicking, you know, but I mean, I've already had in my head, like, all right, I put water bottles. I already had water bottles in the freezer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, ice cubes up the yin yang. So I had a Govee humidifier, and then I
Yep.
took one of those stretch tubes. So dumped a bunch of ice in my humidifier, put that stretch tube, attached it to the cage, letting that thing go, and it was getting cool fog, and then ice. Then I put the what you call it, the frozen water bottle on top of the cage, so all that
Yep.
condensation's dropping. It stayed cool in there. Oh man, I had and because I use Govee on everything, and so I had Govee sensors in there. I'm monitoring the temperatures, like, oh, where you at? Where you at? Okay. It was like the worst 3 days of my life.
Yep, dude, 100%, man.
Yeah, every light I had was off. I was like, nope,
Yep.
no one's getting heat. It's already hot in here. It was like at the hottest point in my apartment, it was like in the 90s. I was like, holy shit. Yeah, even at night, it was in the 90s. I'm dying.
Oh.
You know, I was like, what's the coolest room I can sleep in? Because it wasn't my bedroom. Right. I was in the living room on the couch, like sweating my ass off. I was like, cold showers.
You grabbing the ice fog, talking about, hang on,
right?
Man, hang on. You can have this back in a second.
Yeah. And I had that thing going off every, like, I say like 4 hours. Or actually, no, sorry. When the temperature, I had it set on my Govee for the temperature. So if it raises a certain temp, it will cut it on for me. So if it got about 78, boom, it'll cut on, start putting that in there. And I would literally have to fill it up before I go, right when I wake up, fill it up with ice, get home, fill it up with ice. Before I go to bed, fill it up with ice. And I was like, God damn.
Yeah. The stress we go through to maintain these animals when things go wrong.
Right. Yeah. And the thing, I don't even have it no more either.
Man, yeah.
Well, it's at the the Gecko Gallery in New York. Yeah, it's on. Yeah, it's over there now. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Hell yeah.
Homie Richie bought it. Yeah. So
That's
I was like,
awesome.
yeah, I'm good. Yeah. I said, well, we're almost at that time. So actually, let's talk about the podcast. What's that all about? I know. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure tons of people know about it, but go ahead and plug it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So the Reptile Talk podcast is the rebirth of the Reptile Talk podcast. I originally started when I was still in high school with now Dr. Stephen Tillis, and I brought it back not long after I started working at Nerd. Started back up with my good buddy Rob Christian, and the whole premise was, Rob and I, and even back then Steve and I have had the pleasure of working and getting to know a lot of people in the industry, and we've all learned that sometimes you get the best information when you just listen to people, let them talk about their stories, what they've learned over time. And, versus being like, well, please tell me how you keep this green tree python like everybody else does because you read the same book, but inevitably you're going to get to those things. Right. Yeah. So rather than structure it, let's just talk about it. And even if we don't get to everything, that's okay. We'll have you back and we'll do it again, because we love reptiles. So it's just talking about reptiles in general we get excited about. So that was the premise for the podcast, was just we've got access to some people that not everybody has access to, simply because of the opportunities we've had over the years. And we're thankful for those opportunities. But with that, just get to know the people a little bit more. And along the way, you're going to catch a gem or two, and that's really what it's all about. And that's been the whole premise of the podcast. So we just did our Daytona recap now a couple of weeks ago, and scheduling's been kind of crazy between Rob's job, all of the stuff that I'm doing. I work as a full-time musician and with the business and everything as well. So things have been challenging to try to lock in guests, so we're a little inconsistent right now, but we try to do at least 2 episodes a month right now to kind of compensate for that, and still trying to be consistent. Kudos to everybody that can still do once a week or multiple days a week, because holy hell,
man, we do once a week every Sunday.
I'm all for when Rob and I worked at Nerd, and it was like, okay, dude, this is our 1 day a week that we can make this happen. It was very easy. Now it's like we work very different jobs, have very different opportunities and things happening. So we're like, hey, man, you free Wednesday? No, but I'm free Thursday. I can't do Thursday. What about next week?
Yeah. And that's when you're supposed to have a bunch of them in the chamber. So if you can't make it, boom, we got one to release.
Exactly, dude. We were so good at that, and then when we both moved, and it was like, cool, we're good. We got a few weeks, and then like life kicks in, and you're like, holy crap, man, I'm tired. Like I need to sleep before I can talk for an hour. But yeah, we've got some cool ideas coming down the pipeline for the future. I know Rob's been in some conversations with some reptile keepers out in Australia.
Nice,
and of course,
nice.
Time zone issues. We're talking about 22
Oh, yeah.
and a half hour time
Yeah.
zone difference or whatever. So making that happen is definitely up there on priority.
That's a lot of planning right there.
It is, yeah. So it's like trying to do some stuff in the meantime to be able to bring some new episodes. I know I've been talking with Chaz over at Low-Key Boas to talk about some leopard boa projects and stuff. So got some fun things that we're working on right now to try to bring to you before the end of the month. And but again, the whole premise of the podcast is just talking to the people that love reptiles, talking about their experiences with reptiles, and catch some gems along the way, but get to know the people. And you never know, you might resonate with something that they have to say.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I said, that whole, because we've had one Australian guest on. God damn, man, that was hard to get. And then, we've done a few our buddies in the UK, Jake and Jeff, awesome people, and they love coming on. We love having them on, and that's not a crazy big time difference. I think it's like 4 o'clock their time, it's like 10 o'clock my time, AM. So
right,
it's that Australian one though. Damn, damn.
Yeah. We did an episode with Mikey Bustos from Ants Canada, and he's even though his channel name is Ants Canada, he lives in the Philippines, so it's a 13-hour time zone difference. So we had to prep that. So we were going to bed as he was waking up for the day. That was great. He's like, "Does 8 o'clock work?" I'm like, "It works for me. Does it work for you? Do you want to be awake at 8 a.m. talking to people?" That's the real question,
Are you fully awake at that time? Have you got the caffeine in and all that to tolerate people?
Exactly. But yeah, the time zone thing gets frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we just had Fadi on from over in Canada.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah. We did like a nice little Stenos episode.
Nice.
I said my favorite episodes. No, I'm a gecko biased, so like my top 3 are like, well, I love when you guys had Nate on because that's my guy. Love Nate. You had Jack on. That was a dope one. And then the one Emilio. That's the homie too. I like Emilio.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
man.
Absolutely. Love all those guys, man.
So what is, like, we're about to close this out. What are like your future projects? Like, what are you like in tree boas? What is like something that you're like really looking forward to?
Oh man, there's a lot. I'm excited to really have the chance now with these new rack systems to kind of dial that in and again just take that layer of husbandry to the next level for sure. Project wise, I'm excited to kind of experiment with a few ideas that I've had as far as genetics are concerned, and really just trying to dive into some of those things. Certainly doing some tiger leopard project stuff. I'm always excited for actual genetic combos that we know we can make because they're still not common. So
is that Carnage one? Is that like some genetic thing, or is that just? So
that was going to be my next one. So I've got Mischief, Carnage's son, is ready to go into rotation this year. So I'm really excited about plugging him in. I haven't figured out quite the right female I want to pair him to, but I've got one that I've got my eye on, and as long as she starts to cycle, we'll make that happen. But so he was a red calico. He was just an imported animal. Carnage was an import originally, and unfortunately I lost him at the end of last year.
Wow.
Which was a huge hit. Definitely humbled me for sure.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I was definitely bummed about that, but thankful that I have his offspring, his direct offspring. So, and a couple of the siblings of the one that I kept are with some really good friends of mine that are also very capable, great Amazon tree boa keepers and breeders. So I'll have some more of that lineage to come in the future. But yeah, so I'm really excited. So Carnage was a red calico. The red calico combo is assumed to be 2 different genes, red and calico, kind of married together to be a recessive mutation. I don't 100% align with that, and largely because of the Carnage pairing was the red calico Carnage to a yellow tiger that, while captive bred, to our knowledge, had no red in the lineage. So she couldn't have been a het red calico, but every single baby was at least a red calico. Some were red calico tigers, some were not. So by that theory, doesn't quite make sense. So I don't know if I 100% subscribe to that, but I'm still excited to see what comes out of it. So maybe Carnage was like the super form, because again, he was an import. So maybe it was a different line, that maybe was an incomplete dominant, and all these babies are now that single gene form. So don't know. I'm really excited to try that out and see what happens with it, though.
Oh, I'm definitely looking forward to it. Like I said, when I first saw Carnage, I was like, holy shit. That made me want, I was like, I want a fucking ATB now.
That's
like,
it.
goddamn.
That's it. Absolutely.
Like, I never wanted a snake so bad in my life. I'm like, holy shit. Like, red is one of my favorite colors. So do that on an animal. I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. Yeah, that's why I'm trying to find this Strophaurus wellingtone. They have the red spikes. They're gray body with red spikes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I'm looking for those. I found a person that has them. I'm like, you gonna let me get some? He's like, yeah, I'll probably let you get some. I was like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Like not a lot of people have them. So I was like, all right, man. Like, let me know how much it is, because I gotta do this payment plan.
Let me get started now.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So where can everybody find you at, man?
Everybody can find me on all social media platforms. Brassman Reptiles. Facebook and Instagram are what I use the most. And then, of course, my website, brassmanreptiles.com, where I've got some Amazon tree boas, spotlights, and all of my availability. If you're interested in anything, colubrids, ball pythons, carpets, whatever, brassmanreptiles.com. But if you just want to follow the shenanigans and social media lifestyle, then just search up Brassman Reptiles and you'll find me.
And before we get out, I always ask folks this. Where'd you come up with the name?
So, okay, I've talked about this before, and I enjoy it because it's funny to me. People don't realize it. So, my company name, Brassman Reptiles, I work as a professional trumpet player. That is what I do. And in 2016, I was at Tinley, and I was at the U.S. Ark auction. I was bidding on an animal, and I won that animal. And Phil, who I've known for many years, knew that I played trumpet. So he said, sold, thank you, Brassman. And that nickname stuck for a long time. So when I decided to get some entity name together, Brassman Reptiles, it was inevitable. That was just it.
Dang, there you go. I like that. All right. Well, everybody, when y'all listen to this, have a good night, morning, afternoon, whenever you listen to this. Until next time, we'll see y'all later. Peace.
See ya.
Yeah, Jason on the mic. Welcome to the spot. Breeding those reptiles, straight fire, straight hot. Geckos in the house, snakes twist and turn. Lizards on the prowl, see the passion burn. Breeders in the game, they putting in work. Red tail bows, see them go berserk. Leopard geckos shine like scales of gold. Hobbyists unite, let them stories be told. Putting in that work every day and night. Jason got the spotlight, keeping it tight. Reptile keepers rise, making impact. Breeding them beauties, never looking back. Cages all set, heat lamps in place. Monitor lizards, putting on a chase. From the boa constrictors to the chameleons green. Building up the hobby, live the reptile dream. Corn snakes slither, python stretch. Crested geckos leap, ain't no contest. Spotlighting the keepers, doing it right. Every enclosure clean, every feeding tight. Putting in that work every day and night. Jason got the spotlight, keeping it tight. Reptile keepers rise, make